She thought it was just another delivery to an abandoned diesel shop, but when Angela found a letter in her late father's handwriting waiting on the counter, everything changed. Why was it addressed to her? And how did it get there after all this time? Angela Harlow had made thousands of deliveries across the backroads of Utah, and most of them bled together. Mile markers, fuel stops, motel coffee, and quiet cabins tucked between red rock canyons. But this morning's route felt off the moment she scanned the slip. Cottonwood Diesel Repair, marked as active delivery with a rush tag. She tapped the screen again. The notes clearly said, "Recipient requested drop-off in person. Do not reroute." She frowned. "Wasn't that place shut down?" she muttered, shifting in her seat. Her dispatcher hadn't flagged anything unusual, but Angela distinctly remembered that dusty shop sitting empty for years. She hadn't passed it since her dad's old driving days. Calvin Harlow had once been a legend among long-haul drivers, the kind of man who never needed a GPS because every route lived in his bones. He passed 2 years ago, heart failure, quick and cruel. They hadn't talked much near the end. A few scattered calls, mostly small talk. Angela was on the road, always somewhere else. But today, somehow, this stop felt like it had Calvin's fingerprints on it. She pulled off the highway and rolled down a narrow, cracked road flanked by dry brush and brittle fence posts. The repair shop came into view. A squat cinderblock building with faded red trim, an old diesel pump out front, and a sign that read simply, "Cottonwood Ridge, Diesel and Repair." The strange thing was, the lights were on. Angela slowed to a crawl. The lot was empty, but the overhead fluorescents inside buzzed softly. The windows were clean. The door hung open just enough to invite her in, but not wide enough to seem careless. She parked the rig, checked the box label again, no sender listed, just her company's scan code and the name of the shop. She carried the package under one arm and stepped inside. The place smelled like motor oil and lemon cleaner. A polished counter stood near the front, lined with empty key hooks and a dusty cash register. But it wasn't abandoned. Not exactly. Tools were neatly stored behind a glass divider. There were no signs of a struggle, no disarray, just emptiness. Except for one thing. On the counter lay a cream envelope with a red ink flourish. Her name was written across it in cursive. Angela. Her stomach dropped. She knew that handwriting. Angela put the package down, hands suddenly trembling, and picked up the envelope. The paper was thick, expensive, formal, and unmistakably familiar. Her father used to write holiday cards with this exact red fountain pen. The same little tail on the G. The envelope wasn't sealed. Inside, a folded page and a hand-drawn map. The letter was short. "If you're reading this, it means you showed up, just like I hoped you would. I'm sorry we didn't talk more before I left. There are some people you need to meet and places you need to see. You'll understand why soon enough. Start with the red pins." "Dad." Angela unfolded the map. A rough sketch of southern Utah's highways. 5 red dots, each with a number beside it. No names, just a route. One her father had driven hundreds of times. She looked again at the envelope. In one corner, a printed tracking barcode, newer than the letter. Not handwritten. Likely added by a third party. Had someone mailed this for him? Arranged it to be here after he passed? She pulled out her phone and scanned it into her work system. To her surprise, the delivery log updated instantly and listed the stop as completed. But she had never scanned the box. Angela looked at the counter. The package was gone. She spun around. Nothing. Just the faint electric hum of overhead lights. Adrenaline rose in her chest like a wave she couldn't stop. It wasn't fear, at least not the dangerous kind. It was something deeper, sharper, like she had just stepped into a memory still playing without her. She sat on the edge of a nearby stool and read the letter again. This wasn't random. Her father had planned all of this, to unfold after he was gone. She didn't feel like just a driver following orders. She felt summoned. Angela folded the map, tucked it in her jacket pocket, and stepped back outside into the golden mid-morning sun. A breeze kicked dust across the lot. In the distance, a long-haul rig rumbled along the ridge road, heading west. She didn't know who had helped Calvin pull this off, or how they'd made sure she'd be the one to deliver this exact package, on this exact day, but the trail had begun. That night, back in her tiny home outside Moab, Angela sat alone at the kitchen table, the map spread out beneath a single lamp. Her dinner went untouched. She kept tracing the red pins with her fingers, half expecting them to vanish. The weight of the envelope still lingered in her chest, heavier than any cargo she'd ever hauled. This wasn't a detour. It was a summons, and part of her had already decided to answer it, and something told her it wouldn't stop at 5 pins. Angela didn't sleep much that night. Back at the small rental where she kept her off-the-road life, a quiet place near Moab with desert winds always tapping on the windows, the letter from her father lay on the kitchen counter, opened and reread at least a dozen times. The map was pinned beside it with magnets. 5 red dots. The first, now checked in her mind, had led her to the letter. The second was marked further south, a curve in the road she vaguely remembered, near a canyon turnout. Nothing there on her usual routes, just a dirt patch and maybe an old vending machine. She didn't tell dispatch anything. Called in a sick day, then packed snacks, water, and her father's map into her truck. Something about this felt too personal for explanations. As she pulled off Route 46, the land opened into a dusty bend between towering red cliffs. Scrub trees clung to the rocks, and a pair of ravens circled overhead. The turnout came into view, just as she remembered it. A crumbling patch of gravel with faded tire marks, an old wooden bench, a weathered trailer, and a red service rig parked beside it. The truck was outfitted for field repairs, with dented utility compartments along the sides and faded yellow striping on the doors. A makeshift sunshade was stretched from the hood to a nearby post with bungee cords. Beneath it, an older man sat in a canvas chair, sipping from a thermos. He looked up before she even stepped down from her cab. "You're Calvin's girl," he called, standing. Angela blinked. "I what?" He smiled, wiping his hands on a rag and walking toward her. His jeans were sun-bleached, and his shirt bore the stitched name tag, Denny. "Didn't think it'd be this soon," he said. "But I knew you'd come." Angela climbed down from the truck. "How do you know who I am?" "Your dad showed me pictures," Denny said, patting his chest. "Carried one of you and your dog, the beagle, in his wallet. Used to brag about you. Said you had your mother's spine and his stubborn heart." Angela tried to answer but found her throat catching on the words. She hadn't heard anyone talk about her like that in years. "He told me if you ever showed up with that look," Denny gestured toward the map peeking from her jacket, "then it meant it was time." "Time for what?" He led her to the trailer steps and handed her a folding chair. Angela sat, slowly. "So you knew about this?" "Bits of it. Calvin didn't share everything, but I knew he was planning something. Said he didn't want his story ending with a gravestone. He said there were things left unfinished, and one last route he hoped you'd complete." Denny opened a metal case from his truck and pulled out an old Polaroid photo. "He left this for you." Angela took the photo, a snapshot from years ago. She was maybe 6, sitting on the tailgate of Calvin's old Freightliner. Her hair was in crooked pigtails. In her lap sat a red toy truck, chipped paint and all. Her father knelt beside her, holding up 2 fingers in a peace sign. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, was written, "Pin 2 Station 2. Angela closed her eyes. She remembered that day, vaguely. His rig had broken down near a desert diner, and they'd sat waiting for a tow in the heat. But Calvin had made it fun. They played card games on the tailgate and split a melted popsicle. "Why did he give this to you?" she asked. "Because he knew I'd still be here. And because he figured if you got this far, you might want to know the truth." Angela looked up. "The truth about what?" "Your dad. He left trucking earlier than he let on. Most people thought he just aged out, but he didn't. He walked away on purpose. Said he was done chasing miles and paychecks. Started using that old rig to make private runs, not for profit but for people. Folks he'd helped before or let down. Veterans, shut-ins, single moms trying to keep their old pickups running. He fixed things, dropped off groceries, brought letters. Quiet stuff. And always off the books." Angela's jaw tightened. He never told me any of this. I think he wanted to. But you too. You both had a way of staying tough when talking soft would have done better. They sat in silence for a few moments. The wind rolled through the canyon, hot and steady. Angela looked back at the photo again. She stared at the photo, jaw tight. A part of her wanted to throw it, to crumple it, crush it, do something to make the ache stop. Why now? Why after he was gone? Why not years ago when it still mattered? But the photo stayed in her hand, steady and warm. Her pulse pounded, but the grip softened. Rage wouldn't change the past, but understanding it might. Did he talk about me much? All the time. He just didn't know how to show it in the moment. So he left it behind piece by piece. Like that picture. The map. You think this is just a route? Denny pointed at the folded sketch. It's a record of who he became after everything fell apart. He wanted you to see it. Angela felt the familiar ache behind her eyes. The burn of grief, memory, and regret all twisting together. I'm not sure I'm ready, she said. No one ever is, Denny replied. But you're here. Before she left, Denny reached back into the case and handed her a second envelope. This one was sealed, wax stamped with a red C. It was addressed simply, for her when she reaches Mill Hollow. Angela traced the edge of the envelope with her thumb. She didn't open it. Mill Hollow was dot number 3 on the map. Back in the truck, she started the engine and let it idle for a while. Her hand rested on the steering wheel, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun was beginning its descent behind the rocks. She didn't understand everything Calvin had done. But the second red pin was behind her now, and the road ahead didn't feel so empty. She drove off slowly, the tires crunching over gravel, the map now riding in the passenger seat. In her lap, the photo of the little girl with pigtails and a red toy truck glowed faintly in the amber light. Mill Hollow had shrunk over the years, not vanished, just folded inward, and no longer appeared on most maps. What was once a busy pit stop on Calvin's routes had become little more than a main street lined with shuttered shops, a post office clinging to life, and a general store that looked as if it had been preserved in amber. Angela's tires crunched over gravel as she pulled into a narrow lot beside a faded Coca-Cola mural. A hand-painted sign above the door read, Castillo's General Goods, EST 1979. A tangle of wind chimes jingled above the entrance. She took a breath and stepped inside. The bell over the door rang softly. A middle-aged woman behind the counter looked up from a ledger. She wore her gray-streaked hair in a loose braid and smiled like she'd been waiting years for this exact moment. "You're Angela," she said, setting down her pen. Angela froze. "Have we met?" The woman came around the counter and offered her hand. "I'm Rosa Castillo. I knew your father. Everyone here did." Angela glanced around. The store smelled of cedar and old sugar. Shelves sagged under bags of flour and weathered boxes of screws. In one corner sat a rusty wood stove, surrounded by mismatched chairs, like a forgotten gathering spot. Rosa glanced toward the window, her gaze softening. "Your dad once fixed our delivery truck in the middle of a thunderstorm," she said. "Didn't even ask for anything. Just said, 'This place took care of me when I was young. I'm just returning the favor.'" That's the kind of man he became in the later years, just steady. He used to stop here once a month, even after he retired. Said he liked the drive. Sometimes he brought us coffee, sometimes stories. And always that damn truck, with its radio turned to jazz. Angela followed Rosa to the back room, part storage, part sitting area. A filing cabinet stood in the corner, its top drawer open. Rosa pulled out a small, dust-covered parcel wrapped in brown paper and string. "It's been here 10 years, she said. "He told us someone would come for it one day, and he told us not to open it." Angela hesitated, then took the package. Her fingers brushed against the familiar weight of old wood inside. She untied the string and opened the wrapping. Inside was a carved wooden box. Simple, rectangular, sanded smooth by hand. No lock, no hinges, just a fitted lid. She slid it open. Polaroids. Dozens of them. Angela pulled them out one by one, hands trembling. Some she recognized: birthdays, barbecues, afternoons at the lake. But others she didn't remember at all. One showed her sleeping in the passenger seat of her father's truck, covered in a flannel jacket. Another at a roadside diner, laughing with someone off-frame. And then there was that photo, a picture of Calvin, standing beside a woman Angela had never seen. Tall, with warm eyes and dark curly hair pulled back in a scarf. Calvin had his arm around her shoulder. They looked comfortable, like they knew each other well. Angela flipped the photo. On the back, in red ink, was a phone number. And beneath it, Echo Basin, Lot 12. Her stomach twisted. "You okay?" Rosa asked gently. Angela stared at the photo. "Who is she?" Rosa hesitated. "That might be Hannah. She used to live up near Echo. She and your dad were close. We never asked much, but she came by once after he stopped visiting. Left a letter. Said she'd explain things if you ever came looking." Angela looked up, blinking. "She knew I'd come too?" "Calvin told more people than you'd think. Not the whole plan, just enough to make sure the pieces would be there if you followed the map." Angela's mind reeled. "He did all of this, not just for me, but through other people." "He believed in timing," Rosa said. "Said you couldn't force someone to listen before they were ready. So he set the trail and waited." Angela nodded slowly, then remembered the envelope Denny had given her. She pulled it from her jacket, wax-sealed, addressed simply, "For her when she reaches Mill Hollow." She broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. "Angie, if you're reading this, then you've made it to stop 3. I'm proud of you, not just for getting here, but for letting yourself open up. I know that hasn't been easy. There's more to the story. You'll find Hannah up in Echo Basin. She has answers I never found the words for. You deserve those answers. And you deserve peace. Keep going. You're almost there." "Dad," Angela swallowed hard. The paper crinkled slightly in her grip. She remembered how he used to leave notes in her lunchbox. Little drawings. Silly puns. Then later, when things got distant, the silence grew heavy. And now, suddenly, his voice was back. One letter at a time. Rosa stood by the wood stove, giving her space. Angela looked at the Polaroids again. The woman, the mystery, the weight of what she didn't know. Some of it hurt, but much of it felt like rediscovery. Like her father had been speaking in a language she only now understood. She packed the photos carefully back into the box, tied the string around it again, and stood. "I need to get to Echo Basin," she said. Rosa smiled. "You'll want to take the north road. The pass is rough, but it'll get you there by sunset." As Angela stepped back into the sunlight, the wind caught the edge of the brown wrapping paper, tugging it free. It danced across the gravel like a signal flag, then settled near a patch of desert sage. She didn't chase it. Back in her truck, Angela laid the next pin on the dashboard and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life beneath her. She adjusted the seat instinctively, her fingers grazing the worn leather of the steering wheel. The familiar scent of diesel, sweat, and old pine air freshener filled the cabin, the same smell that used to cling to her father's jackets. She let it linger, anchoring her to a life she'd inherited without ever choosing. She wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. She was following a voice that had waited patiently for her to be ready. The road to Echo Basin was more a winding test of patience than a proper road. Pitted with ruts, framed by sheer rock walls and whispering pine, it climbed steadily into the foothills. At one point, the road narrowed to a crawl, a fallen pine blocking half the lane. Angela slowed the rig to a stop, threw on the brake, and stepped out into the chilly air. She grabbed a rope from the side compartment, looped it around the trunk, and inched the truck forward until the path was clear. Her shoulders ached. Her palms stung. But deep down, the work felt right, like Calvin had laid this challenge just to see if she'd push through. Angela's tires kicked up dust. The red pin for stop 4 now tucked into the visor above her. Her father's map, creased from use, rested on the passenger seat. The number scrawled on the back of the Polaroid, the woman with warm eyes and a scarf, was programmed into her phone, though she hadn't dialed it. She wasn't ready. Not yet. Echo Basin was less a town and more a breath between mountains. A scattering of trailers, aging RVs and cabins stitched along a forest road. She followed hand-painted signs until she saw it. Lot 12. A rusting mailbox sat crooked at the entrance, and behind it, a cedar-paneled trailer rested among the trees, its windows trimmed in green, the porch shaded by a canvas awning. A rocking chair moved gently in the breeze. Angela parked and got out, boots crunching over pine needles. The door opened before she knocked. The woman from the photo stepped outside slowly, her face older now, but unmistakably the same. Her hair was still dark, though streaked with gray, and her posture carried a gentle wariness, as if she too had been preparing for this moment without knowing exactly when it would come. "Angela," she said, voice soft. Angela's breath caught. "You're Hannah." "I am." She nodded once, as if confirming something long unspoken. "And you're here, just like he said you would be." Angela stood silent. Hannah stepped aside. "Come in. I've kept everything he left." The inside of the trailer was simple but warm. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with dog-eared novels and mechanic manuals. The kitchen table was covered with papers, and an old radio sat in the corner, humming faint jazz, a familiar tune. Hannah poured tea without asking and set a small wooden box between them. Angela stared at it. "Another one?" Hannah nodded. "This one he left with me. Said I'd know when to hand it over. Told me you'd need to read the rest where he spent his last real days." Angela glanced around. "Here?" "No, not quite." Hannah handed her a worn key. "He spent his final months in a cabin near Cliffside Lake. Said it brought him peace. That's where the 5th red pin is, isn't it?" Angela slowly nodded. She sipped the tea but barely tasted it. "I have to ask, what were you to him?" Hannah smiled softly. "A friend. A mirror. A second chance, maybe. We met after he stopped hauling. I helped him fix up his truck once, and he came back the next week with lunch and no real reason. That became a pattern. We talked. A lot. About you and life." Angela looked down. "Did he ever say why he didn't tell me any of this?" "He wanted to, but every time he tried, he worried it was too late, or not enough. So he started building something he hoped you'd understand better than words." Angela looked at the box on the table. "Can I open it?" Hannah gestured toward it. "It's yours." Inside, folded in worn paper, were letters, handwritten, numbered, and dated from the last year of Calvin's life. One was marked, "To be read at Cliffside." The others were short, confessional. Notes on memories, regrets, hopes. A record of a man trying to make peace with the silence he left behind. Angela pressed the stack to her chest. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." "Anything you do feel," Hannah said. "That's the point." The road to Cliffside Lake curved through alpine fields, the sky dimming into a soft lavender. Angela arrived just before nightfall. The cabin stood tucked among tall pines, its porch covered in wind-blown leaves, a padlock dangling from the front door. The key turned easily. Inside it was quiet, dusty, but preserved. An old coat of Calvin's still hung by the door. On the desk sat a thick slab of wood, stained dark with age. 5 small holes had been carved into it, for already empty. In the center, one last red pin stood upright, glossy, untouched, like it had been waiting just for her. Angela stood still in the doorway, breathing in the place where he had, by all accounts, lived his truest self. She sat at the small desk by the window and opened the final letter. "Angela, if you're here, then I guess I did something right. I know this can't make up for all the time we lost. I don't expect that, but I wanted you to know who I really was, not just what I left behind. I messed up. After your mom passed, I didn't know how to be both her and me. So I went quiet. I drove. I escaped. And I told myself you were better off figuring life out without me pulling you down. But I watched. Quietly. I knew you were strong. These stops, Denny, the Castillos, Hannah, they're part of the story. But you were always the destination. I don't know if you'll forgive me. I just hope you'll carry the parts of me worth keeping. You're braver than I ever was. And you're exactly the driver this world needs. Dad, Angela folded the letter and sat back, tears warming her cheeks. She stayed the night in the cabin. In the morning, she made coffee on the old stovetop, left the window open for the wind, and sat with her father's letters until the sun rose over the lake. Later, before she left, she tacked a photo of her own onto the corkboard by the door. One she took with her phone, standing on the porch, holding the last red pin in her palm. She wrote on the back, "Finished the route," then climbed into the truck, folding the map one last time before heading home. Only now she finally knew where that was. This story reminds us that some journeys don't end. They just wait for the right time to begin again. What would you do if your parent left a trail for you to follow after they were gone? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more stories like this. See you in the next video.